it was declared impossible. The cliffs were too steep, the terrain too brutal, the whole idea too ambitious for anyone with common sense. But California built it anyway, with prison labor, countless pounds of dynamite, and sheer stubbornness. Today, it's the most photographed road in America. 5 million people drive it every year. Songs have been written about it. Films have been set on it. Here's the entire story of the Pacific Coast Highway. Let's start at the beginning. It's the early 1900s, and the California coast has a problem. A big one. The land between Los Angeles and San Francisco runs along a stretch of coastline so wild and vertical that nobody can figure out how to build a road on it. The Santa Lucia Mountains drop straight into the Pacific. There's no flat ground. There's barely any ground at all, just cliff, ocean, and the occasional rattlesnake. Before this road existed, the communities along the California coast were essentially islands. If you lived in Big Sur and you needed to get to Monterey, you had options. None of them were good. You could take the Old Coast Road, an 11-mile inland detour through the mountains that became completely impassable in winter. You could try the water route, weather permitting, or you could just stay home. For decades, that's what most people did, but a doctor named John L.D. Roberts has had enough. In the early 1900s, Dr. Roberts needs to travel from Seaside to the site of a shipwreck near Big Sur. 30 miles. It takes him 3.5 days by horse. 3.5 days for 30 miles. He arrives furious and stays that way for decades. Roberts spends the next several years taking photographs of the coastline, lobbying politicians, and showing anyone who will listen what California is leaving on the table. It's his photos that eventually convince the state legislature to fund the road. California gets the message. In 1919, construction on what will eventually become Highway 1 begins. The state looks at the most difficult stretch, Big Sur, a 60-mile gauntlet of sheer cliffs and deep canyons with nothing resembling a roadbed, and decides to build there first. Bold choice. How do you build a road on a cliff? Slowly, painfully, with a lot of explosives. The state sets up 3 prison camps along the coast. Inmates from San Quentin are sent to work at Little Sur River, Kirk Creek, and Anderson Creek. They're paid 35 cents a day and promised reduced sentences. But here's the thing. These are honor camps. No fences. No armed guards. The men could walk away if they wanted to. Most don't. Because where exactly are you going to go? The terrain is so brutal, so remote, so completely impassable that the mountains themselves are the guards. What they accomplish with hand tools and dynamite is remarkable. Workers drill blast holes into solid granite, marble, and sandstone by hand. Then they pack in the charges. Millions of pounds of explosives over 18 years. A single massive blast at Limekiln Creek alone uses 40,000 pounds at once. The cliff face is blown apart section by section, and from those shattered rocks, the road takes shape. Slowly, one detonation at a time. Then there's Bixby Creek. The canyon drops 260 feet to the ocean floor. A bridge has to cross it. And not just any bridge, engineers need something unprecedented. A span long enough to clear the canyon without any interior supports that a landslide could take out. Construction begins in August of 1931. The logistics alone are staggering. Workers haul 45,000 individual sacks of cement up a massive wooden framework suspended over the canyon. Each bag goes up by hand via a system of cables and platforms 260 feet above the creek. The whole structure is assembled on a road so narrow and treacherous that supplies had to come in slowly, one truck at a time. When the Bixby Creek Bridge is completed in 1932, it comes in under budget at just under $200,000, equivalent to roughly $3.5 million today. At 360 feet, it's the longest concrete arch span in the California State Highway system. At the time of its completion, it's the highest single-span arch bridge in the entire world. Engineers look at what the workers built on that hanging wooden scaffold and shake their heads. After Bixby, the road pushes on. The Great Depression hits in 1929, and perversely this accelerates construction. New Deal money pours into California. Federal work programs need projects that can employ men immediately. Highway 1 is exactly that. Men who have lost their farms, their businesses, their savings. They're now laying road on California's cliffs with picks and wheelbarrows and whatever dignity they can hold onto. You lost your farm? Here's a shovel. Welcome to Highway 1. At least it's work, right? Yeah, at least it's work. By 1937, after 18 full years of blasting, building, and rebuilding, the road is done. California officially designates it State Route 1 in 1939. In Southern California, it carries the name Roosevelt Highway for a while. Then in 1941, the state renames the stretch running through Orange, Los Angeles, and Ventura counties. The Pacific Coast Highway, or Highway 1 depending on where you are. In Southern California, Los Angeles, Orange County, it's the PCH, full stop. The further north you go, past San Luis Obispo, past Big Sur, past Carmel, locals will correct you if you call it the PCH. Up there, it's just Highway 1. Same road, different world. It had no right to exist, but there it was, carved into the edge of the continent by convicts and dynamite and Depression-era desperation. And it was beautiful. The road opens, and almost immediately the rich and famous figure out what everyone else will take decades to realize. This road is special. Before the highway even reaches Malibu, Malibu already has a complicated history. A woman named May Ringe owns it. She and her late husband Frederick purchased 13,000 acres of prime California coastline back in 1892. When Frederick died, May took over management of the entire estate. And May Ringe had one firm policy. No road through her land. She means it. She fights the state in court for years, filing lawsuit after lawsuit to block the highway. When the legal battles start going against her, she builds fences across the surveyed route. She hires armed guards to block engineers and surveyors from setting foot on her property. She is, by every account, absolutely serious about this. She loses. The highway goes through Malibu. And within a year, May Ringe, having exhausted her fortune in legal fees, is leasing her beachfront lots to Hollywood stars because if you can't beat them, you might as well make rent. Malibu Colony begins in 1926 and 1927. The early residents read like the opening credits of a Golden Age film. Clara Bow, Gloria Swanson, Gary Cooper, Bing Crosby, Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and Douglas Fairbanks. The Pacific Coast Highway isn't just a road, it's a private drive for the most famous people on Earth. The pattern sticks. Malibu Colony becomes one of the most exclusive addresses in California, and the highway running directly in front of it becomes the most glamorous stretch of road in America. Decades later, homes here sell for over $100 million. The Pacific Coast Highway still runs right past them, still one lane in each direction. Still occasionally flooded by king tides creeping up the beach. Further up the coast, something even grander is taking shape. At San Simeon, newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst has been building since 1919, the same year Highway 1 broke ground. His estate, formerly known as La Cuesta Encantada, the Enchanted Hill, is designed by Julia Morgan, California's first licensed female architect. Hearst gives Morgan one instruction: build something extraordinary. She delivers. The result is a 165-room castle perched 1,600 feet above sea level, surrounded by 127 acres of terraced gardens, reflecting pools and sculpture imported from Europe. The outdoor Neptune pool is one of the most photographed swimming pools on Earth. Hearst fills it with turquoise water and surrounded it with ancient Greek columns, salvaged from real archaeological sites. Winston Churchill stays at Hearst Castle. Greta Garbo, Clark Gable, Charlie Chaplin again, Cary Grant. The guest list reads like a who's who of every era's most powerful and celebrated figures. Hearst invites everyone who matters, and they all come because the road now makes it possible to get there comfortably, and because a Hearst invitation is not something you decline. Then there's Big Sur itself. In 1944, a novelist named Henry Miller settles on a ridge above the canyon. His most famous books, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, are banned in the United States for obscenity. But the contraband writer is famous in literary circles and he draws other artists. poets, painters, photographers, and free thinkers begin arriving. Big Sur becomes a creative colony on a cliff, reachable only by Highway 1. And then Jack Kerouac shows up. His 1962 novel Big Sur captures the solitude and wildness of the place. The book is dark and searching, about a man trying to find peace in nature and failing. It becomes part of the highway's mythology. The counterculture has found its coastline. The Esalen Institute opens in 1962 on the Slate's Hot Springs property in Big Sur. Alan Watts gives the first lecture in January of that year. Esalen becomes the laboratory of the human potential movement. Psychology, Eastern philosophy, meditation, encounter groups, all of it happening in hot springs perched directly above the Pacific Ocean. The road brings the seekers in, and Big Sur shapes them. By the 1960s, the Pacific Coast Highway is more than infrastructure. It's a symbol. Drive it and you're free. The music reflects it. The Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas. The Doors with Jim Morrison at the wheel somewhere between Malibu and Monterey, writing songs that sound like the road itself. Hollywood keeps shooting here. The PCH appears in films, TV shows, commercials, album covers. Drive a convertible down Highway 1 past Big Sur and you're in the movie even when the cameras aren't rolling. The Pacific Coast Highway doesn't just connect cities. It defines a certain California, the one people picture when they close their eyes and think about freedom. Here's a thing about the Pacific Coast Highway that the tourism brochures tend to leave out. The road was always unstable. The cliffs it was carved from are constantly moving. The mountains above it are saturated and crumbling, and the ocean below is very patient. Since 1937, the highway has recorded over 1,500 landslides. It's been closed more than 55 times. Some closures last a day, some last years. The road that took 18 years to build has spent a significant portion of its existence being destroyed and rebuilt, section by section, over and over again. This is not a design flaw, this is just geology. The Big Sur coastline is geologically young and technically active. The mountains are still rising while the ocean simultaneously erodes their base. When rain soaks the saturated slopes above the highway, the hills don't just get wet. They move, and everything on them, including the road, moves with them. Engineers have known this since construction. They built it anyway because the alternative was no road at all. The bargain has always been the same. We'll repair it when it breaks. And California has kept that bargain for nearly 90 years. Nothing tests that bargain harder than what happened in 2017. In a single calendar year, the Pacific Coast Highway took 3 separate catastrophic hits, each one worse than the last. February. A column of the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge gets pushed sideways by an active landslide underneath it. The bridge moves 8 inches in a single night. Caltrans closes the highway immediately. The next day, they announce the bridge is damaged beyond repair. 1 week later, it fully collapses into the canyon. Big Sur is cut off from both directions. The community that spent decades isolated before the bridge was built in 1932 is isolated again, nearly a century later. Caltrans replaces the bridge with a new single-span steel structure for $24 million. It reopens in October of that year, 8 months after the collapse. March. Paul's Slide. 2 million cubic yards of material comes down a hillside south of Big Sur, covering the road in debris and leaving barely 11 feet of usable pavement on one edge. The rest disappears under a mountain of dirt and rock. May Mud Creek. This one is the worst of the 3. A massive deep-seated debris flow buries a quarter mile of Highway 1 under 6 million cubic yards of material. To put that in terms that make sense, 6 million cubic yards is enough debris to fill more than 2,000 Olympic swimming pools. The hillside collapses more than 65 feet deep over the asphalt. The road doesn't just close, it ceases to exist. In its place, a brand new peninsula of rock and soil sits jutting out into the Pacific Ocean, created in a single afternoon. The highway doesn't fully reopen until July of 2018, more than a year of combined closures across all 3 events. The Big Sur economy, which runs almost entirely on tourism, takes losses that some businesses never recover from. The disasters keep coming. 2024 brings Regent's Slide, a massive earth movement that closes a 6.8-mile section south of Big Sur in February. Crews stabilize the roadbed by drilling several thousand steel dowels deep into the hillside. They remove more than 300,000 cubic yards of material, with 250,000 more still waiting to go. The closure drags on through 2024 and all of 2025. In early 2026, the Pacific Coast Highway fully reopens. For the first time in 3 years, accounting for overlapping closures from the Regent's Slide and the Palisades Fire, the entire road is drivable from end to end. But here's the thing. Nobody wants to say out loud, this isn't over. It's never going to be over. Sea levels are rising. The California coastline is eroding at rates of 6 inches to a foot per year in some stretches. Over 120 miles of California state highways already face measurable erosion risk. In Malibu, a study has warned that the Highway 1 corridor faces compounding threats from both shoreline erosion and coastal storm flooding as water levels rise. Scientists at the University of California have publicly asked the question, should California stop repairing Highway 1 and let the ocean take it? Some cities are already acting on that logic. Carlsbad is considering relocating its stretch of coastal highway inland and restoring the old roadbed to wetlands. The phrase engineers use is managed retreat. It sounds calm and deliberate. What it really means is, we're losing this argument with the ocean, and we should start planning accordingly. The Pacific Coast Highway was blasted out of cliffs that were never meant to hold a road. Those cliffs are still making that point. Every few years, they make it loudly. The road survives. For now, 5 million people drive the Pacific Coast Highway every year. That number keeps growing. They come from everywhere, from Ohio and Germany and Japan and Australia. They rent convertibles at LAX, point them north, and follow the ocean for as long as they can. Some are checking a bucket list item. Some are chasing a feeling they first got from a movie or a song or a photograph they saw in a magazine 20 years ago. Some don't know exactly why they came. They just know they had to. That pull has a history, and it starts before most people realize. The Pacific Coast Highway became a cultural object almost the moment it opened. Malibu's celebrity colony turned the road into a backdrop for the golden age of Hollywood, a place where the most famous people in America happen to live, right along the edge of the ocean. Hearst Castle made it a pilgrimage destination for anyone who wanted to touch American power and excess at its most theatrical peak. And Big Sur made it an address for anyone who needed to think clearly, live differently, and figure out who they actually were. Each of those identities stuck, and they layered on top of each other until the highway became something almost impossible to reduce to a single meaning. The music followed. The Beach Boys wrote it into their catalog, the Mamas and the Papas. AWOL Nation and Weezer released Pacific Coast Highway in the movies in 2020, a song that's basically a love letter to the road itself. And The Doors, whose entire catalog sounds like it was written somewhere between the Santa Monica Pier and the Marin Headlands. Jim Morrison grew up in California. He felt this coast the way some people feel religion. The road has its own playlist now, and it's longer than the highway. Television put it on screens in living rooms across America for decades. Baywatch used the Malibu coastline so thoroughly that international audiences began to think of it as the default image of California. 6 Feet Under sent its protagonist riding a motorcycle up the Pacific Coast Highway in its final scene, one of the most celebrated finales in television history. The OC made it the backdrop for teenage drama and impossibly beautiful sunsets. Commercials for cars, cologne, credit cards, and everything else that wants to signal freedom, sun, and possibility, they all end up here eventually. The PCH doesn't even need to be named in these productions. Show the image cliff, ocean, convertible, horizon, and everyone on Earth knows exactly where they are. Hollywood never stopped shooting here. The Bixby Creek Bridge alone has appeared in so many films and car commercials that it may be the single most photographed piece of road infrastructure in America. It shows up on camera somewhere every week of the year. The bridge that 45,000 sacks of cement built by hand, 260 feet above a canyon, is now one of the most recognizable structures on the planet. and Malibu. The celebrity colony that began with Clara Bow and Bing Crosby leasing beachfront lots from a financially ruined widow now hosts homes that regularly sell for over $100 million. The same Pacific Coast Highway that May Ringe spent her fortune trying to stop still runs directly in front of every single one of them. Still 2 lanes, still occasionally flooded by king tides, still exactly as beautiful as the day it opened. That's the thing about this road. The world around it has changed enormously. The road itself has barely changed at all. And that tension is actually the whole story. The Pacific Coast Highway was built by convicts on cliffs that engineers called unbuildable. It was blown out of rock with explosives and poured by hand by men earning 35 cents a day. It has been buried by landslides, cut by fire, and threatened by an ocean that is slowly and methodically reclaiming California's coast. It has been closed more times than anyone has bothered to count, and repaired every single time. There's something stubborn and specifically Californian about that. The state has spent a century insisting this impossible road should exist, and so it does. Right now, in 2026, the highway is fully open for the first time in 3 years. The repair crews are gone. The detour signs are down. 656 unbroken miles of Pacific Coast Highway run from Dana Point in the south to Leggett in the north, every mile of it open. Drive it with the windows down. The Pacific is right there, exactly where it always was. Some roads are just roads. This one is an argument California has been making for 100 years, that beauty is worth the fight, that impossible things are worth building, that a road no one believed could exist is worth rebuilding every time the mountain decides to take it back. So far, California is winning that argument, but the ocean hasn't given up. So here's where we started. A road declared impossible, built by convicts with dynamite, that took 18 years to finish and has been destroyed and rebuilt dozens of times since. A road that Hollywood glamorized, bohemians colonized, and millions of strangers drive every year chasing something they can't quite name. The Pacific Coast Highway is not just asphalt on a cliff, it's a statement. And every time the mountain falls and the crew shows up and the road gets laid again, California makes that statement one more time. Subscribe for more stories like this one.